Welcome to European Railway, the video magazine for the continental enthusiast. In this issue we travel to Germany and study freight and passenger traffic in the Frankenwald, with activity on the lines leading up to the town of Blankenstein. A visit to rural France and the electrified line south of Neustadt. A return to Germany and the industrial line of the RWE Rheinbahn west of Köln. Our lineside interlude features Italian mainline action, we sample Hungarian passenger and freight activity to the north of Debrecen. Some rural line activity in the southern Czech Republic, and finally part 2 of our journey up the Jungfrau mountain railways in Switzerland. We begin in Germany and the Frankenwald hills to the southeast of Saalfeld. This former DR region is an important industrial area, with a number of sawmills which convey much of their raw materials and semi-finished products by rail. The line from the junction at Hocherade is single track, running to the station at Wurzbach, where trains reverse and then onwards up the grade to eventually reach the towns of Lobenstein and Blankenstein. Most of the current-day freight operations utilise a fleet of Class 204 and 290 diesels, hauling trains of timber products from Saalfeld to a factory at Ebersdorf and another at Blankenstein. Traffic is buoyant with up to 7 return workings each day. Here 204-803 heads train number 55262, the 1531 from Saalfeld, up the grade past Heinrichsdorf. Number 290-517 provides power at the rear of the train. 10 years previously, timber trains from Saarfeld ran over the now largely mothballed line from Triptis. During a Plandampf event in April 1996, this Class 58 and Class 50 pairing recreate the yesteryears as they pass through the sleepy town of Remptendorf. Today, passenger services on the line run to a 2-hourly frequency and are mainly formed of these Class 642 two-car Desero units. This is the activity at the junction station at Unterlemnitz. Semaphore signals are still very much in evidence here, as the town of Lobenstein is glimpsed in the far background. The sawmills at Ebersdorf receive up to 5 workings per day from the sidings at Lobenstein. Here 29517 leads this train at just after 5 in the evening. Viewed from the same vantage point, but 10 years before, is this Class 58 heading return freight for Saalfeld via the junction at Tripdis. Passenger services in 1996 were mainly worked by local-owned stock and were almost entirely hauled by Class 219 diesels based at Saalfeld. The end of the line is now here at Blankenstein, where we see 641021 arrive with a 1403 from Saalfeld. In the background is an ex-DR Class 346 shunter, one of a number used at the nearby sawmill. Ten minutes later and this freight arrives from Lobenstein, where the locos will exchange wagons before forming the 1726 return freight for Saalfeld. There are 2 such freight trips each way per day on this branch, the first of which arrives at 05:23 before departing back at 07:12. Finally, on the run down the valley at Lichtental, 3 Class 204 make up this train bound for Saarfeld. Even today, and without the added attraction of steam, this line offers plenty of traffic and variety for the railway enthusiast. In the Massif Central area of France lies the junction town of Nusard. Situated in the beautiful rolling countryside, it is the terminus of the unique 283-kilometre single-track electrified line from the southern town of Béziers, which lies close to the Mediterranean Sea. Freight traffic is limited to a daily flow of steel coil to a factory at Saint-Chély-d'Apcher on the northern section of the electrified line. This, and just one through-return passenger service, makes up the handful of trains that use the line each day. Here at Massiac 67417 and 67535, head train number 435501, the 0532 from Clermont-Ferrand to Saint-Chély. The train is made up of 16 wagons weighing around 1,500 tons and runs on a Monday to Friday basis. The train has a pathing stop here between 0702 and 0709 in the morning. The 0554 from Urillac to Clermont-Ferrand comes off the single track from Nusard. Shortly after, the two Class 67-400 diesels will continue their journey south. The disused station at Talizat is our next location. With just one electric haul train each way per day, it is amazing that the overhead infrastructure still survives intact. Due to the severe gradient out of Nusard, the heavy steel train is split into two portions to run south. The most spectacular structure on the route is undoubtedly this, the Garabit Viaduct. Designed by the famous French architect Gustave Eiffel, the bridge was built between 1880 and 1884. It was opened the following year in 1885 and spans the Troyer River over a gap some 165 metres wide. The structure is over half a kilometre long, 120 metres high and weighs over 3,587 tons. Of interest is the fact that the structure was used to represent the condemned bridge in the 1976 film, The Cassandra Crossing. The view from the small town at Le Vieillard, just north of Saint-Flour, shows the railway off in its typical rural setting. Here the two 67-400 diesels head back to Noussac to collect the second portion of their train. In the middle distance can be seen the Chateau de Barbery. After leaving Télizat station, seen here in the far distance, the line descends on a series of wide sweeping curves to Saint-Flour. With just 3 workings over this line each day, one has to be patient. At just after 1 p.m, the 2 locomotives approach with the second portion of their freight to Saint-Chély. Here we see freight-liveried BB8604 hauling the 938 from Béziers to Paris. This is Noussac station, where the train reverses and a diesel takes it on forward to Clermont-Ferrand. The southbound train is seen arriving behind 67566, whilst the northbound train is ready to depart with its diesel locomotive already attached. Finally, we leave this fascinating section with another shot of the daily freight which crosses the Garabit Viaduct, this time heading north with empties at just after 11 AM. To the west of Köln are situated some of the biggest power station generation plants in Germany, and they are there for a very good reason. It is the proximity of lignite which provides their fuel. Feeding these huge installations with the brown stuff is largely down to a network of around 300 kilometres of private railway. We take a look at operations in September 2006. The Rhineland lignite mining region covers an area of over 2,500 square kilometres. Today, the power generation company RWE Rheinbronn AG, which was created during 2003, operates 4 huge open cast mines feeding into 5 power stations. Most of the lignite is transported by rail using dedicated locomotives and wagons, such as seen here. The company also operates an older generation of locomotive, all of which are finished in this attractive green livery. Almost all train sets are of a dedicated length, comprising 14 wagons. These run on standard gauge track, but have a much wider loading gauge than the normal DB rail network. Trains can regularly be seen operating in reverse, where an alarm is sounded on the rear wagon as a warning. The driver operates the train from one of the 2 gondolas situated on either side of the locomotive's single cab. The Class EL2000s, as they are known, total 10 in number and were constructed by Adtranz in 1999, especially for operations on this railway. As well as coal, clay, which covers the lignite reserves, is also carried as a waste product in dedicated 8-axle tippler wagons. The locomotives have 2 pantographs fitted, where one mainly acts as a spare. For working inside the loading and discharge points, these small pantographs are utilised, where the normal overhead catenary could not be used. The network of lines is electrified throughout at 6,000 volts at 50 Hz. Each of the new locomotives is rated at 3,800 horsepower and weigh in at 143 tons with a maximum speed of 60 km per hour. A 6th power station is being constructed here at Neurath, adding another 10,000 megawatts of generating capacity. The 4 open cast lignite mines in the area produced over 100 million tonnes per year, most of which is used in these power stations. The railway also uses a small fleet of diesel shunting locomotives, used for hauling wagons to and from the nearby DB Rail network. This is number 473, from a batch of 9 built in 1963, and capable of producing 530 horsepower. For the observer, you can generally expect 5 or 6 movements each hour on the northern and western extremities of the network, 7 days per week. The EL1 class of locomotives form part of a batch of 109 built between 1954 and 1965 for use on mining railways. Finally, number 505 heads south with a train of loaded wagons. Access to this area is best made by road if you want to see the extent of the network. However, if travelling by train and alighting at Pfaffendorf station on the DB line north of Horem, it is possible to walk the short distance to the Hambachbahn to view the operations there. This long viaduct takes the main Faenza to Roma line across the valley of the River Paglia, just to the north of Orvieto in the central region of the country. Eurostar ETR 500 high-speed train sets are common. This one crosses the structure on a working from Milano. This line forms one of the main routes east of the capital city Budapest and onwards into the Ukraine, and sees many locomotive-hauled passenger and freight workings. The majority of services on the line are operated by Class V43 electrics, as seen here, with V43-1141 heading for Nyíregyháza. V43-1145 follows shortly after. Freight trains were also seen, typically one per hour. This one heading south behind another B43. Finally, an M41 heads this endangered ND Mott rail set towards Debrecen. Both stations lie north and south of the regional town of Normo, which is located some 50 kilometres southwest of Brno, in the southern part of the country. We begin at Shumna, as Class 842 diesel unit number 842015, built in 1993, arrives with the 1410 from Okryski. These single-track branch lines are usually operated by these and Class 810 units, an example of which is seen in the next sequence. Trains generally operate to an hourly frequency in each direction, beginning at 5 AM until around 7 or 8 PM in the evening. This is the 1517 departure from Moravsky Budyjovice. We now move to the bigger junction station at Hrušovany nad Jevashovkou, between Nomo and Břeclav, and close to the border with Austria. Here, a Class 742 diesel hauling non-powered trailer cars calls with a service for Břeclav. These locomotives were designed for heavy shunting and branch line work. The date is the 7th of June 2005. In the foreground, 809232 departs with one of the 2 hourly services down the short branch to Hevlin. These X-Class 810 units were modified in the early 1990s for driver-only operation on the most likely of used lines. The Class 842s also operate with non-powered trailer cars. Here, 842017 arrives with a 1555 service from Břeclav. Freight traffic is confined to just 2 services each way per day. Here, the afternoon departure from Nomo to Břeclav arrives at around 5 PM, headed by one of the numerous Class 771 diesels, of which 194 standard gauge locomotives were supplied to the Czechoslovakian railways by SMZ Dubnica in 1972. 771043 calls briefly at the yard to pick up loaded wagons before continuing on towards Breclav. Finally, with the small loco depot on the right containing a handful of Class 742s, unit number 842017 returns north with a service from Breclav to Normo. This is just one of the many fascinating rural lines to be found in the country. This is the second part of our mini-series on the narrow gauge railways of the Jungfrau, as we journey from Kleiner Scheidegg up to Eigergletscher and onwards to Grindenwald. Kleiner Scheidegg is the junction and therefore the focal point for services from Lauterbrunnen, Grindenwald and the Jungfraubahn. On 16th of July 2006, unit number 204 departs forming a well-loaded train destined for the line's terminus at Jungfraujoch. which at 3,454 metres is the highest station in Europe. Train services arriving and departing from Kleine are almost constant, with a half-hourly timetable on most of the connecting routes. During busy periods, some services can be formed of 3 separate train formations. One of the newer trains on the line, headed by Unit 218, one of a batch of 4 built in 2002, departs for the Summit station. The BD-HE24 railcars, dating from the mid-1950s and early 1960s, share duties on the line with the newer units. This is 202, which was built in 1955. This line uses twin overhead conductor wires and runs off a 3-phase AC supply, rated at 1125 volts and 50 Hz. The trains are equipped with small twin pantographs. With the 4,158 metre high Jungfrau as the backdrop, a pair of BD-HE48 twin railcars descend towards Kleine Scheidegg. This is the Sphinx Observatory, one of the main tourist attractions. It was inaugurated in 1931 and today provides ideal conditions for a whole range of scientific work to better understand the alpine environment. Being this high up, even aircraft flying overhead don't seem that far away. The north face of the Eiger dominates this scene as another unit descends on the 52-minute trip down from the summit. The line drops over 90 metres in just over a kilometre from here to the station at Grund, before the 8-kilometre climb up to Kleiner Scheidegg. The Wengernalbahn has convenient cross-platform interchange here with the Berner Oberlandbahn, which runs down the valley to Interlaken. Finally, one of the Wengernalbahn BDHE44 units, number 117, dating from 1964, arrives with a terminating service from Kleiner Scheidegg. Switzerland holds a huge fascination for railway enthusiasts and tourists alike, and when the weather is as nice as this, there can be fewer places better. As we conclude this programme, we would like to thank you once again for watching this edition of European Railway.